She cut through my chain lock like it was ribbon on a gift basket, then started directing the tow truck like she owned the damn FBI. What she didn't know, that Jeep was wired tighter than a cartel safe house, and she'd just triggered a federal alert system. I didn't even want the damn house. That was my first thought when the lawyer handed me the deed. It felt more like an obligation than a gift. My grandma Rosa left it to me after she passed, a beige, 2-story in Willowbrook Estates, the kind of suburb that smells like fertilizer and HOA violations. I was knee-deep in task force training at the time, gearing up for field work with a joint narcotics unit. DEA cross-ops, surveillance coordination, asset tracking, the real alphabet soup stuff. The plan was simple: hold onto the house, let my sister Maya stay there while I deployed, rent it out when possible, maybe even use it as a crash pad during downtime between operations. It was supposed to be my safety net. That's what Rosa called it. Mijo, she told me the last time I saw her, you can lose a lot in life. Family, friends, even your way, but never let them take your foundation. I never forgot that. Grandma Rosa was a force. Immigrant grit wrapped in warm tortillas and off-key mariachi humming in the kitchen. She raised me after our parents died. I was 12 when the drunk driver ran that red light. She buried 2 kids that day. After that, it was just her, me, and Maya. She worked 2 jobs into her 60s to keep us fed and in school. Taught me how to stand tall even when your knees wanted to buckle. She had this way of making everything feel safe just by being in the room. Even when she was in hospice near the end, barely able to lift her hand, she'd squeeze mine like, "You got this, Dante." I don't cry much, but when I walked into that house alone for the first time after she passed, it hit me hard. It still smelled like her. Vanilla candles, cinnamon, old tile. Her favorite chair was right where she left it, blanket folded perfectly across the back. The floor creaked in all the same spots it did when we were kids sneaking in past curfew. That place wasn't just drywall and shingles, it was our whole damn childhood. So yeah, I wasn't exactly thrilled to inherit it. Not because I didn't want it, because I didn't feel ready to carry it. Maya moved in shortly after I shipped out. She's my younger sister by 3 years, soft-spoken but tough in that quiet schoolteacher way. Teaches 8th grade English, knows every Disney song by heart, and bakes when she's anxious. She kept the house going while I rotated through assignments. Paid the utilities, watered the plants, talked to neighbors I didn't even remember. She made the place feel lived in again. I'd get little updates through email and spotty WhatsApp calls. Fixed the back gate today. Mrs. Patterson across the street says hi. The hydrangeas exploded this year. Just normal, domestic stuff. A weird, comforting contrast to the cartel mess I was knee-deep in over here. The Jeep stayed parked out front. That's important. The Jeep was government-issued, black, reinforced, federal plates with very subtle task force identifiers. To the average person, it looked like a military vehicle, or maybe something used by a contractor. But inside? It was a mobile surveillance rig. Tucked behind panels and under the seats were encrypted comms, directional mics, GPS sniffers, IR sensors, about 300 grand worth of tech that Homeland Security does not like you touching. It wasn't my personal ride. It was on loan. I was responsible for it, but it belonged to the feds. Willowbrook Estates didn't care. It's one of those planned communities where every house looks like it was cloned from the same DNA. Beige, beige, light beige, and if you're feeling wild, taupe. Everyone has the same mulch, the same stone path, the same 2 flamingos if it's July. And floating above all of it like some pastel-drenched eye of Sauron is the HOA, a group of volunteers who take neighborhood standards more seriously than the Constitution. They send out letters if your trash can is visible from the street. They fine you if your grass is more than 2.5 inches. There's a woman 3 blocks over who got dinged for having a wreath that wasn't seasonally appropriate. I'm not kidding. And sitting on top of that power tower, Karen Kensington Wright. If you're already picturing a woman with a platinum bob, a clipboard, and a Lexus parked slightly crooked in a no parking zone, yeah, you're on the right track. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was the HOA. Her husband Carl sat on the city planning board, which made her feel invincible. She measured things, literally, like with an actual ruler. Lawn height, trash can distance, even the angle of your satellite dish. I once saw an email she sent to a neighbor that ended with, "We're not that kind of community." Whatever the hell that means. At first, she didn't bother us. Maya kept the house clean, the yard neat, and the Jeep tucked as far into the driveway as it would go. Nobody said anything. A few people waved. One guy even thanked her for our family's service. Maya said things felt quiet, almost too quiet, like people were watching but didn't want to be seen watching. Still, she figured it was just the usual HOA weirdness. Until the first letter came. Folded, taped to the front door like a warning shot. HOA violation, unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. No contact, no warning, just a fine and a veiled threat about escalating enforcement actions if the violation is not corrected within 72 hours. That's when things started to turn. It was taped right over the peephole like some kind of hostage note. Maya found it when she went out to water the front plants. A single sheet of HOA letterhead, folded once, printed in aggressive italics like they were trying to shout through the paper. Violation notice, unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. That was the line that started it all. She sent me a photo of the letter, thinking maybe it was a mistake, like maybe they meant someone else, but it had our exact address. It even described the vehicle. Dark utility Jeep parked in driveway. Oversized tires, military-style markings, potential commercial use. The cherry on top, a fine of $50 a day until it was removed. I remember staring at that photo on my phone halfway around the world, trying to process how a federally issued surveillance vehicle with government plates somehow got labeled commercial, like I was running a landscaping business out of it or something. I mean, sure, it's not exactly subtle, but there's nothing illegal about parking a government vehicle at your own damn house, especially when you're literally deployed on assignment for that government. Maya wasn't angry at first, just confused. She did what any reasonable person would do, called the HOA office, got voicemail, sent an email, no response. So she printed out my deployment orders, walked over to the little clubhouse where Karen kept her office/throne, and asked to speak to someone. That's when she met her. Karen Kensington Wright. If passive aggression could take human form, it would be this woman. Maya said she looked her up and down like she was tracking a mud stain across new carpet. Didn't invite her in, didn't ask for clarification, just stood there in her pressed khakis and dry clean only blouse, blinking slowly while Maya tried to explain the situation. My brother is active duty. This is his vehicle. He's deployed right now. I can cover it if that's the issue. Or... Karen cut her off. If your brother can't follow simple community standards, perhaps this isn't the right neighborhood for your family. Just like that, not even pretending to listen. Maya told me later it was the way she said, your family, like it had a smell. And I'll be honest, at first I still tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I've been overseas long enough to know people back home get tunnel vision. Maybe she just didn't get it. Maybe she was one of those rulebook people who couldn't imagine nuance. Maybe she thought she was just keeping the neighborhood nice. But then the second letter came. This time in a manila envelope, certified mail. Official looking as hell. Still the same violation, but now with language about ongoing noncompliance, financial penalties, and potential property encumbrance. It sounded like they were prepping to put a lien on the house. For a Jeep, parked in my driveway while I was serving the country. It didn't make sense. Maya was rattled and I could hear it in her voice. She kept repeating that phrase from Karen, maybe this isn't the right neighborhood, like it stuck under her skin and wouldn't come out. I told her to hold tight. I'd sort it when I got back. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. See, I've dealt with cartel bosses, drug runners, guys with gold AKs and pet tigers. You get a sense when someone's pushing for something bigger than what they're showing you. Karen wasn't just mad about a Jeep. She had a goal. We just hadn't figured out what it was yet. I wish I could say it stopped with the letters. That maybe after Maya showed her my orders, or offered to cover the Jeep with a tarp, or just generally acted like a decent human being, Karen would have backed off. Let it go. Focused on someone else's mailbox or improperly stored recycling bin. But Karen doesn't let go. Karen escalates. At first, it was just the fines, $50 a day, every day. Maya started stacking the notices like a collection. They showed up in the mailbox, on the door, even once wedged under the windshield wiper like a parking ticket. And they were always worded the same, formal, aggressive, and vaguely threatening. Continued noncompliance may result in enforcement action under Section 4.1 of the Willowbrook Estates Covenant Guidelines. No one ever explained what that actually meant, but it sounded serious enough to keep Maya up at night. Then the calls started. Not to me, I was still overseas. To Maya, to her job. She told me one morning I was calling her from a base break room that smelled like gun oil and burnt coffee, and her voice had that tight, trembling edge I only hear when she's trying not to cry in public. Dante, he called my principal. Who did? Carl, Karen's husband. He's on the city council, remember? He said he just wanted to make sure the district was aware that one of their teachers was involved in an ongoing legal dispute with her neighborhood HOA. She laughed when she said that, but it wasn't a funny laugh. It was the kind you make when you're trying not to lose it. He made it sound like I was unstable, like I was bringing drama into the school. I almost threw up in the staff bathroom. I wanted to punch something, anything, preferably Carl's perfectly moisturized face. Maya hadn't done a damn thing wrong. She'd just tried to keep the house from becoming a target, but Karen had already chosen us, and now she was tightening the screws. After that, we noticed a pattern. Nate Johnson, retired Marine, lived a few streets over, suddenly got slapped with a violation for excessive motorcycle noise, even though he hadn't ridden in 2 weeks. Sarah Martinez, Navy wife with a husband deployed in Bahrain, fined for unprofessional yard decor. You know what that decor was? A stone frog wearing a cowboy hat. I'm not even joking. Every military family in the neighborhood started getting hit. It wasn't subtle either. Same language, same veiled threats, same certified envelopes. If you had a military sticker on your bumper, you were a target. And here's the worst part. Most people just left, sold quick, packed up, moved on. Because who wants to deal with that kind of pressure when your spouse is halfway across the world getting shot at? You don't want a war at home too. Maya tried to push back. She filed a formal response with the HOA board, citing federal protections for military service members. She even dug up a copy of Grandma Rosa's original HOA contract from when she bought the house back in the 80s. Turns out, buried on page 9 in fine print, there's a clause that explicitly exempts government and military vehicles from residential restrictions. She brought that copy to Karen personally. Karen didn't even flinch. You can't possibly believe some decades-old technicality overrides current community standards, she said, in that slow, syrupy voice she uses when she thinks she's being civil. Besides, that clause was never properly ratified. It doesn't apply. Maya stood there with the paper in her hand and said she felt like she'd just been gaslit into a parallel universe. Nothing made sense. Logic didn't matter. Truth didn't matter. Karen had decided she was right, and that was the only reality that counted. Then came the tow truck. Maya called me in a panic. "There's a guy in a vest circling the block," she whispered. "He keeps stopping by your Jeep and writing something down. I think they're going to try and take it." That night, we installed a motion camera over the driveway. Nothing fancy, just enough to see who was coming and going. Within 48 hours, we caught Karen herself on the footage, walking up to the Jeep in yoga pants and a Patagonia fleece, tape measure in hand, measuring the distance from the tires to the sidewalk, taking photos, walking slow like she owned the place. 17 visits in 3 days. She even opened the gate to the side yard once, crossed the line into our actual property. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about the Jeep. It wasn't about the rules. Karen was trying to make us leave, not because of the vehicle, not because of Maya, because she'd decided, for whatever twisted, classist, HOA-drenched reason, that our family didn't belong in her perfect beige kingdom anymore, and she was going to do whatever it took to make sure we got the message. I told Maya not to engage anymore. She'd done everything right. She stayed polite. She responded to every notice. She submitted documents. She even baked muffins for the stupid HOA Community Unity meeting, and that woman still found a way to insult her outfit. At this point, I didn't want her anywhere near Karen. That woman was poison in a pantsuit. So I started handling things myself, even from overseas. I filed a formal complaint with the military legal office. JAG reviewed it and said we had grounds to challenge the HOA's actions under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Basically, there are federal protections that prevent stuff like this: harassment, property liens, towing government-assigned vehicles, especially while a service member is deployed. It was made for situations like ours. I thought that would be it, that the moment someone with a government seal on their email stepped in, Karen would fold. She didn't. Karen doubled down. The JAG office sent her an official cease and desist notice. Nicely worded, very formal, full of "we respectfully request" and "in accordance with federal statute." Maya printed it out and hand-delivered it to Karen's office. Karen took it without a word, looked down at it, then smiled. Smiled. That night, we got hit with 3 separate violation notices. One for improper use of reflective materials on a vehicle, the Jeep's government decals. One for unauthorized exterior surveillance equipment, our driveway camera, and one for disruptive landscaping. You read that right. Disruptive. Landscaping. They said our rosemary bushes were growing unevenly and projecting an unkempt image. I fought cartel members who were less petty. At that point, I went bigger. I contacted the state attorney general's office and submitted a formal complaint under the Fair Housing Act. Cited patterns of targeted harassment, abuse of power, potential discrimination. The response? We're currently experiencing a high volume of inquiries. Your complaint has been added to the review queue. Great. I reached out to a civil rights nonprofit that handles HOA overreach cases. A guy named Rick called me back. Sounded like he'd eaten gravel for breakfast every day since '94. He'd seen this before, told me off the record that unless we could prove financial damages or discrimination tied to protected status, it'd be an uphill battle. And even then, the HOA would stall, delay, bury us in paperwork. Karen's playing HOA hardball, he said. That's her turf. She's done this before. Maya tried to rally the neighbors. She went door to door, the old-fashioned way, with a clipboard and a folder of printed violations, trying to find others who'd been targeted. Some nodded politely. One guy told her quietly, "We're with you. But we've got a mortgage, 2 kids. We can't afford to get on her bad side." Another literally closed the door mid-sentence. The most anyone offered was a shrug and a good luck. We were on our own. Karen must have caught wind of Maya's little campaign because the next day we got a formal warning that distributing unsanctioned materials without HOA approval was prohibited. She even cited some vague clause about protecting the tranquility of the neighborhood. The next morning, someone egged our garage door. Maya was shaking when she called. Not crying, just done. I could hear it in her voice, that flat, numb tone people get when they've been holding it together too long. She said, "I didn't sign up for this, Dante. I just wanted to live in Grandma's house and keep the hydrangeas alive." I didn't know what to say. I was halfway across the planet, stuck behind a chain-link fence, watching cartel convoys roll past in infrared, and my sister was at home getting terrorized by a woman with a tape measure and a taste for power. I called my commanding officer. I laid it out. Told her I needed emergency leave, that I had a civilian crisis at home involving legal action and potential loss of property. She was quiet for a second, then said, "Is this about that Jeep?" My blood ran cold. She knew. The task force already knew something was going on. Apparently, the Department of Homeland Security had received a ping from the Jeep's tracking system, something about multiple proximity events and attempted tampering. That vehicle was never supposed to be touched without clearance, and according to the logs, someone had been approaching it, repeatedly. That's when the weight shifted. That's when I felt it. Not hope, not yet, but a tilt, like the floor was finally starting to tip in the other direction. Because if there's one thing Karen Kensington Wright didn't know, that Jeep wasn't just mine. It belonged to the United States government, and she had just stepped into a world she didn't understand. I landed stateside, pissed off, sleep-deprived, and about a hair away from dropping my badge on Karen's doorstep like a calling card. The flight home had been long, and the minute my boots hit the driveway, everything looked off, not destroyed, not vandalized, just a little too neat. The Jeep was gone, not towed, not hidden, gone. There wasn't even a grease mark on the concrete. Maya met me at the door, pale and shaking, holding a crumpled receipt, a handwritten one. No company letterhead, no tow authorization, no citation. Just an address, a phone number that rang dead, and the words, "Private removal, paid in cash." Karen paid a tow guy, in cash, to remove a federally issued surveillance vehicle from a private driveway without a court order, a warrant, or even a signed complaint. No paperwork, no chain of custody, nothing. "I tried to stop them," Maya whispered. "I stood in front of it. I called the cops. They wouldn't do anything, said it was a civil matter, and they couldn't intervene. And then Karen stood there, right there, with her phone out, filming me like I was the problem. She said I was interfering with property recovery. I couldn't even breathe. I had to sit down on the front steps to keep from losing it. Because here's the thing. That Jeep, it wasn't just a government vehicle. It was part of an active operation. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the Jeep had been flagged as a mobile drop point in a pending trafficking sting. We'd been using it to monitor signal intercepts and store encrypted data from a cartel network operating stateside. It was all top clearance. That Jeep wasn't just equipment, it was a hot node, and she'd tossed it like junk mail. I made one call, just one, to my task force contact, told him what happened, gave him the receipt, sent a screenshot of Karen's HOA email signature. 15 minutes later, the phone calls started. First from Homeland, then the DOJ, then a U.S. Marshal I hadn't spoken to in 6 months asking me, "You say who touched that vehicle?" Karen Kensington Wright had no idea what she'd just stepped in. See, federal property, especially when used in an ongoing operation, doesn't get treated like a neighbor's ugly lawn gnome. You don't get to decide it violates aesthetic cohesion and haul it off for cash behind a strip mall. That's interference with a federal investigation. That's destruction of government assets. That's a felony. And then it got even better. Because remember that camera we'd set up in the driveway? It had been rolling the whole time. And the footage? Oh, the footage was beautiful. Karen standing next to the tow driver, directing him, smiling, laughing, holding a manila folder, one that looked suspiciously like the stack of violation letters she kept handing Maya. Then the Jeep getting hooked, hauled, dragged away with its front axle scraping pavement. No paperwork, no badge, just her smug little face like she'd won. It was all there. The camera had cloud backup. And now? That footage was in the hands of the federal government. I wasn't even mad anymore. I just felt quiet, calm, like standing in the eye of a storm, because for the first time in months, I wasn't playing defense. Karen had made a move, a big one, the kind of move you don't walk back from. And now, finally, she wasn't just messing with us. She was messing with them. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, that had passed. I was done yelling, done pacing, done imagining what it'd feel like to drag Karen into court by her cheap rhinestone lanyard. I was calm now, focused, that kind of focus you get on mission right before breach. No adrenaline, just cold calculation. Karen had no idea she'd just set off a chain reaction she couldn't control. But I did. The plan didn't come to me all at once. It came in pieces while I sat in Grandma Rosa's old armchair with my boots still on, the lights off, Maya asleep upstairs, and the only sound in the house being the occasional creak of old wood that still remembered what peace felt like. First thing I did was call in every favor I had, not in a flashy TV spy way. Quiet, tactical. I started with Lopez, my former surveillance tech out of Quantico. We'd trained together. She owed me one from a busted op in Houston where I'd dragged her out of a blown safe house with a busted femur. I asked her what kind of data a federal Jeep like mine would be storing. She said, everything. Turns out, that specific model had an automated telemetry log, a constant ping of its status, location, and physical access attempts. If someone so much as jiggled the door handle without authorization, the system noted it. If someone opened the hood, that's logged too. And the moment Karen's tow guy hooked it to his rig, it triggered a forced relocation alert. That alert got kicked up to a Homeland Security analyst. The analyst flagged it as possible asset compromise. And then it just sat there. Because no one expected an HOA president in yoga pants to be the cause of a potential breach. Now they knew. I compiled everything. Timestamps, camera footage, copies of the violation letters, even the HOA bylaws Grandma Rosa had saved in a fireproof box under the stairs. Maya had highlighted every clause Karen had either twisted or flat out broken, especially the one that said HOA officials could not access or interfere with private property without prior written consent or legal mandate. There it was, in black and white. Karen wasn't just wrong, she was reckless. Then I pulled the wild card, my old friend Devin. Devin used to be an assistant DA. Now he worked private litigation for a firm that specialized in, and this is the part that still cracks me up, HOA abuse cases. I didn't even know that was a thing. Apparently, there are entire firms that do nothing but sue HOAs for overreach, harassment, and misconduct. Devin owed me a favor. Big one, from a case involving a sting that could have buried his cousin. I never filed the report. He never forgot it. I brought him everything. He didn't blink. This isn't civil anymore, he said, flipping through the stack. She removed government property with no legal order, no right of access, no chain of custody. That's theft, possibly obstruction. And if she knew it was federal, if she knew, then she's looking at real prison time. I asked him what we needed. Proof of knowledge, he said. Something that shows she knew what she was doing, and did it anyway. That's when I remembered Maya's text. Back when Karen first started targeting the Jeep, Maya had sent me a message, just one line. She said she doesn't care if it belongs to the government. I dug up the message, found the date, matched it to the day Karen came to the door, red-faced and muttering about not letting federal vehicles make us look like a war zone. It was in Maya's notes, too. She documented the conversation. She was a teacher. She documented everything. That was our proof. The plan was simple: expose Karen publicly, bury her legally, and drag the HOA board with her for negligence. I wasn't going to torch the place. I still loved the house. But I was going to salt the earth she built her little empire on. We gave Homeland the footage. Devin filed for an injunction and began preparing the civil suit. And I started drafting a presentation for the upcoming HOA general meeting. Yes, the same one Karen was planning to use to push a vote on new vehicle appearance standards. You know, the same vote that would quietly allow her to make the Jeep ban permanent and retroactive. She didn't know I was coming. She didn't know who else was coming either. Because remember those military families she targeted? Turns out I wasn't the only one who kept receipts. The night before the HOA general meeting, I stood in the garage staring at the empty space where the Jeep used to be. That patch of concrete had seen more drama in the last few months than most courtrooms. It was almost poetic. Maya came out with a bowl of cereal, her late-night comfort food, and leaned on the doorframe. "You ready for this?" she asked. "Not even a little," I said. We both laughed, but under the surface, we were buzzing. This wasn't just about the Jeep anymore. It was about every neighbor she bullied, every family she pushed out, every meeting she manipulated. And tomorrow, we were going to walk straight into the lion's den, with our jaws set and our evidence prepped. The plan had pieces. Homeland had quietly opened a file on the incident and issued an official investigation into the unauthorized removal of federal property. They couldn't say much. Government stuff always moves slow and ain't doughy. But their letterhead alone was enough to cause panic in anyone with a shred of self-preservation. Devin had prepared 2 legal documents. One was a cease and desist order for Karen and the HOA board, citing harassment and HOA overreach. The other was a civil claim notice, laying the groundwork for a formal lawsuit on behalf of me, Maya, and 2 other families who finally agreed to join us after they saw what Karen did to the Jeep. But the most important weapon? That was the story. Told in public, in her kingdom. We got to the community clubhouse early. Maya baked muffins again, not to be polite, but to take up the same tray Karen used to showcase her own condescending little lemon bars. People started trickling in. The usual suspects, retirees in pastel golf polos, the couple that always complained about the recycling bins, Karen's loyal lapdogs with their clipboards and smug expressions. And then, the ones we hadn't seen in months. Nate Johnson showed up in his dress blues. Sarah Martinez walked in with a stack of signed affidavits and her 6-year-old in a Spider-Man hoodie. And then there was me. I wasn't in uniform, didn't need to be. I wore jeans, a plain black polo, and carried a single folder. Karen didn't even look up when I walked in. She was too busy whispering to Carl, her husband/political PR machine, and organizing papers like she was about to announce HOA Constitution 2.0. But when I took a seat near the front, next to Devin, who brought his own chair because he said folding chairs made him cranky, her eyes finally met mine. And I swear to God, I've seen drug lords in interrogation rooms look less nervous. The meeting started like always. Karen cleared her throat, welcomed concerned homeowners, and launched into her usual PowerPoint, full of clip art, bar graphs, and vague phrases about community character and protecting property values. Then came her main event. The HOA board proposes a motion to amend Article 7 of our guidelines regarding vehicle appearance standards, effective retroactively to... I stood up. Devin stood up right after. Karen paused. "You'll have a chance to comment after the motion is..." Devin cut her off. "Actually, we're invoking Section 3.5 of the HOA bylaws, right to present grievance with 30 seconds notice." Karen blinked like a busted Alexa. She didn't move, so Devin handed her the first envelope, the cease and desist. Then he handed the second one to the board secretary, and I opened my folder. "Neighbors," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I know a lot of you haven't heard from me. I've been gone, deployed, but I came home to find my family under siege, not from criminals or terrorists, but from the very people who claim to represent this community." Then I started laying it out. The timeline, the violations, the harassment, the targeting of military families. I read Karen's own emails, redacted but damning. I passed around copies of the original HOA bylaws Rosa had signed, showing the clause protecting military vehicles. And then, the grand finale, Maya set up the projector. We played the footage, Karen arms crossed, Karen smirking, Karen directing the tow truck as it yanked a federal surveillance vehicle off our property. The room went silent. You could hear people shifting in their seats. Carl leaned forward, whispering something to her, but she didn't respond, just stared at the screen like she was watching her own funeral. After the video, I said one last thing. "You don't have to like me, you don't have to like my Jeep, but if you think this is okay, if you think this kind of behavior represents you, then maybe you're the one who shouldn't be living here." And then I sat down. There was no applause, no shouting, just this weird, heavy silence. Karen tried to regain control. She fumbled through her papers, tried to bring the motion to a vote, but nobody seconded it, not even Carl. A board member, one of the quiet ones, stood up and suggested tabling the vote until the current legal situation is resolved. That's when Karen lost it. "I warned you all this would happen. You think this is justice? You think he's a hero? He's manipulating you." She looked at me. "You think you're going to bring me down because you know some lawyers and government boys? You don't scare me, Mr. Vega." And I smiled, because I didn't need to scare her. She'd already done it to herself. Karen always struck me as someone who rehearsed her comebacks in front of a mirror, The kind of person who believed she was always the smartest in the room, even when she was wildly out of her depth. So when she stormed out of that HOA meeting with Carl trailing behind her like a stunned pageant husband, I knew something had cracked. And the crack spread fast. The day after the meeting, an unmarked federal sedan pulled into the neighborhood and parked right outside the HOA office, the converted third garage bay next to Karen's house, where she kept her printer, a policy board, and about a dozen framed awards she'd given herself. A guy in a DHS windbreaker walked in with a file folder and walked out with her desktop computer. No announcement, no warning. Just walked in, unplugged it, thanked her husband on the way out. That was the first domino. 2 days later, the HOA board held an emergency session. Karen wasn't invited. In fact, the new acting chair, some guy named Dennis who used to keep to himself and only showed up for landscaping discussions, sent out a letter to all homeowners announcing Karen's temporary administrative suspension pending legal review. They used those words, legal review. Turns out multiple board members had gotten wind of Karen's behavior weeks ago, but they were too scared to speak up. Carl had been playing both sides, spinning everything into bureaucratic language and hiding violations behind procedural walls. And it worked, until we showed up with proof. And then it just unraveled. One of the board's former treasurers came forward, said Karen had pressured him into signing off on discretionary fines that weren't properly documented. A paper trail emerged, fines paid in cash, not deposited into HOA accounts, but listed as administrative handling fees. Someone else found emails between Karen and a private towing company, the same company that took my Jeep, arranging off-the-books removals for what she described as unsightly or non-compliant vehicles, not worth the hassle of protocol. She'd been doing this for years, targeting people, removing cars, pocketing cash, and no one had questioned it because she wrapped it all in HOA language and looked the part. She was organized, she was articulate, she wore pearls to trash pickup day, but beneath all of it, she was just a petty tyrant with a clipboard and a god complex. The local news picked up the story next. A reporter showed up to our house asking about the HOA president under federal investigation. I wasn't going to say anything, but Maya, bless her, invited her in, made her tea, and told the whole damn story, start to finish. She showed her the footage, the letters, even the muffin tray. The segment aired on a Tuesday night. It opened with a shot of the now empty HOA office and ended with Maya's quote, "We didn't move here to fight. We moved here to belong, and we shouldn't have to choose between the two." Karen's face was on every screen in the Tri-County area, her name trending on Facebook. The HOA's Yelp page got bombed with reviews ranging from "would not recommend unless you enjoy fascism in beige slacks" to "beware the Kensington Kraken." And the final blow? That came in the mail. A certified letter from the DOJ. I don't know exactly what it said, but I do know that Karen's house went up for sale within a week. Carl disappeared from the city council site. Her Facebook page vanished, and at the next HOA meeting, Dennis formally motioned to remove her name from the community charter. It passed unanimously. She was gone, stripped of title, under investigation, and replaced by a rotating board made up of, get this, actual homeowners who wanted to serve, not rule. Nate Johnson was one of them, so was Sarah Martinez. Even Maya got asked to join. Funny how fast things change when you shine a little light on the garbage. And you know what the kicker is? The Jeep came back. The government had tracked it to a private impound facility outside the city, unregistered, uninsured, and sitting behind a fence with a broken lock and a camera that hadn't worked in months. They recovered it, inspected it, and dropped it off in our driveway with a smile. They even cleaned the tires. I stood there the morning it returned, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight hit the hood like it was some kind of divine sign. Maya stood beside me, arms crossed, and said, "Do you think she'll ever show her face again?" I took a sip, shrugged. Not unless she's in cuffs. The neighborhood feels different now. Not just quieter, though yeah, the screaming matches about mailbox alignment have finally stopped, but like something finally exhaled, like the place unclenched its jaw. You wouldn't think one woman could cause that much tension across an entire street, but you'd be surprised how fast peace spreads once the tyrant packs her bags and vanishes into whatever HOA hell she came from. I still walk past her house sometimes. Or I guess her former house. It's for sale, overpriced, and sitting empty, waiting for someone new. The bushes are overgrown now. No more suspiciously symmetrical flower beds or handmade courtesy notices tucked under windshield wipers. Just silence. And for once, it's not the kind that feels weaponized. Maya's better. She sleeps through the night. She laughs more. Teaches her kids how to pull weeds the same way Grandma Rosa taught us, gently, with both hands, like you're helping the garden breathe again. I catch her sometimes standing in the driveway staring at the Jeep like it's some kind of relic. She keeps saying we should sell it now that I'm stateside again, but I know she won't. She doesn't say it out loud, but I think it makes her feel safe. Like if it survived Karen, it can survive anything. The new board? Surprisingly decent. They don't always agree, but they listen. They repealed half the made-up fines, removed that ridiculous ban on government decals, and even started planning a real community garden, not just a row of hedges shaped like disappointment. Nate runs most of it now. He's got this dry humor that makes the meetings feel less like interrogations and more like potlucks with paperwork. Maya joined too, mostly to make sure nobody ever weaponizes muffins again. As for me, I still wake up some mornings expecting the fight. It's weird, after months of being on edge, to suddenly live in a place where no one's measuring your lawn or threatening legal action because your car faces west instead of east. I still keep the file, though, everything from the case, the footage, the letters, the court filings, not because I think we'll need it again, but because it reminds me what we stood up for. It's funny, when I first deployed, I thought the worst part of being away would be the danger. Turns out the real war was back home, and we won it not with badges or boots or classified intel, but with truth, persistence, and just enough stubbornness to outlast the queen of fake authority. I never thought I'd care this much about a driveway, a Jeep, or an HOA bylaw, but Rosa did, and now I do too. And when people ask me what happened to the woman who tried to take our home away, I just smile and say, she learned the hard way. Don't mess with family, especially not ours.